guys, welcome back to Two Sticks. We're going to be doing something a little bit different today.
Way different.
Before we get into that though, I should have introduced us. My name is Scott.
I'm Belida.
This thing we're going to be doing today is another discussion. Instead of being about something particularly science fiction, we're going to be doing something a little different. We both saw and enjoyed the show Mindhunter. Season 1, and Belida is even familiar with the book, if I'm not mistaken. Is that true?
Yeah, I read it a couple of years before that series came out. So
exactly. So what we're going to do is just do a little review. This may not be as long as our other discussions. It may be
it may be twice as long.
I don't know. But we're going to do a little review of that first season of Mindhunter and just riff on some other related topics and see where it kind of takes us. So first of all,
was it you that introduced me to the idea?
Well, I had been hearing about that show for a long time, for like at least a month before we watched it. I had people at work telling me about it. My brother was telling me about it. It just seemed like, and I was seeing ads for it on Netflix, and so everybody was saying it was a fantastic show, so I wanted to watch it, but I don't generally watch a lot of TV shows by myself, so when you came over, I suggested it.
Well, let me give you a little more background. I usually get up in the mornings outside my building, and I do some kung fu, and I do some stretches and stuff, and this guy usually smokes. So for months, we're just kind of synced. I'm like, hey, how you doing, right? And then, started talking and discovered we have some interest in common, we have some interest not in common, and he's like, hey, you should check out this show. And the first scene of the show is a naked man taking a shotgun and blowing his brains out. And I'm like, whoa. And I had read this book, and I wasn't sure if the TV series was about the book or based on the book, and it was.
Yeah, and the cool thing about that first episode and that first scene is that it really sets the tone for the entire season. I mean, that is perfect. It wasn't like they had all of this exposition and build up and introducing you to characters and showing you their family homes and all that shit. They went right to the police the police, what do they call that? It's not an interrogation, but...
No, they were the FBI investigation.
They were, but what were they doing with that guy? They were trying to talk him off the ledge.
He was basically a hostage negotiator.
That's what it is. Yeah, right? They were negotiating. Thank you.
And he had been doing that job. That guy blew his brains out, and it kind of affected him. So he went back to the FBI, like Quantico, the FBI headquarters, and they're like, look, we're gonna put you on this kind of academic thing, all right? We're going to send you back to school. He had a chance to go back to school and learn about, the modern psychiatry and everything. And they eventually wound up pairing him with this older guy, an older investigator, field investigator. As they were going around to different police departments, teaching them about the application of modern psychology to criminology, that's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
They would also get involved in cases, which I don't know how exactly true it is to real life, but that was something the guy talked about in the book. The guy talked about in the book about how as the psychology began to advance and it would trickle its way into criminology and criminal investigations, the FBI began to come up with this idea of profiling. Because that book got me so into the science of criminal profiling and serial killers. As far as the known science and the accepted science, that series is extremely accurate. Extremely accurate to at least the mainstream of what's mainstream right now. So,
I had kind of been learning here and there about criminal psychology, but not studying it out of a textbook per se. More just learning about different criminals and what they had done.
And there was that mass murder you committed at one time.
Yeah, and then, yeah, exactly. That no one knows about, so subscribers, don't go telling anybody about that. But, yeah, and so when I saw that show, I just thought it would be fascinating because this is sort of an issue. I mean, it doesn't seem like it doesn't seem like it affects most of us, right? Because most of us have never been a victim of that kind of thing, and most of us have never been a victim of a mass shooter or something like that.
Well,
but it's like the ability to profile people before they commit
this
violent
one thing you
acts
mentioned
is something that
This
we need.
one word you mentioned, I want to pounce on a little bit, right? We talked about mass shootings, but these are really serial killers.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, mass shootings are the serial killers of our day. There was far, far fewer mass shooting type things going on, okay? And just people going bonkers and doing mass killings. It's much more common now, both numerically and I think statistically, right? Like percentage of the population wise. Whereas serial killers, it was something, the more you study it, the more you find out there's actually more serial killers than you think. We're a lot less protected against them than you think you are,
Yeah, because a serial killer doesn't have to be somebody big and brawny and smart, and you would think if someone was a killing machine, like we always say, oh, so-and-so's a killing machine, like maybe they're a wrestler or something.
Right.
But a serial killer, oftentimes, they don't look like that. Sometimes they're frail people. They're often unathletic.
Jeffrey Dahmer looked like everybody in his neighborhood.
Yeah, the Green River Killer looked like, I probably could have kicked that guy's ass. But what these people do is they prey on the weak, people that are weaker than themselves most of the time. So even somebody who's not particularly smart or strong or fast can get away with killing a bunch of people because they're focusing on a certain demographic.
Here's some of the science. Here's some of the academics, right? And it depends on the type of person they are. It depends on the level of intelligence. If you have a serial killer who has a low level of intelligence, right? They're often what they call a disorganized killer, right? And oftentimes, the first time they kill is almost by accident. It's usually someone, a man who is kind of inept socially and inept with women, right? And they wind up living at home too late. Like they're already getting past their 20s and they're still living at home because they're kind of having trouble dealing with the real world. They may have done some time in the army, and then they attempt to initiate a relationship with a woman and it goes wrong, and they kind of panic because the woman's panicking. She's like, stop, and during the thing he kills her, right? And that's like the first time that guy's ever come in the presence of a woman or a man, right? And it becomes a sexual fetish, and they wind up repeating that experience. And so oftentimes it's not that they're looking for someone weak or strong, it's that they're looking for a particular type or a particular fetish.
Yeah.
Which is kind of crazy from the viewpoint of most of us. You're like,
well, Ted Bundy, he said that his sort of neurosis started when he was younger, and he traced it back to these detective magazines that he would get a hold of when he was a kid, but they were like bondage themed. They would show these beautiful women being controlled and manipulated, and begging for help, and like for him it was a very sort of dark erotica that he got addicted to.
I'm gonna say in the book, that's one thing the author mentions, and he says that that's one reason why the police departments and the FBI work to censor that from the covers of magazines, because it used to be on the cover. But there's also a train of thought that people think maybe Ted Bundy was just saying that to externalize the blame. He was trying to blame something that he was fully aware of and responsible for. So, well, it was pornography that made me do it,
Right, and a lot of people have said that, that he was, and maybe that he colluded with the church, I guess, there was a church, I suppose, that organized that final interview that he gave when he was on death row, and some people say, well, he was just being a mouthpiece for what the church wanted to say, and I would have believed that, given that viewpoint credence, until I heard another killer mention the same magazines as being, the first time he saw. And what the point of it is, it's not that those magazines were evil or that they need to be abolished. I'm not even saying that. I'm not, particularly, I don't believe in censorship, right?
Yeah.
But the thing about it is it's the marriage, of sexuality and violence.
Well, if you think about it, there's probably more explicit
now there's way more
bondage,
stuff than
rape
that. Yeah.
videos, and S&M available for free 24/7.
Yeah.
And we don't know if that in particular. I mean, our world does appear to be getting more psychotic as time goes by, and this is I'm looking from the viewpoint of age, But getting back to the show, I mean, what just leaped out at you from the show?
The best part of the show, well, there were two things. The first thing is the interplay and the back and forth, kind of the witty back and forth
between the
two main characters. Yeah, that for me, their relationship and watching them kind of struggle to relate to one another and to work together, but then having these kind of off the cuff funny moments. And then working really well as a team at different times.
Right.
Like watching that whole relationship and dynamic play itself out, for me, was the best part of the show. Right under that, like really close second, would be the killers that they actually interviewed.
Right.
And
who were pretty scary.
Who were very, very convincing.
Right.
Like the guy that played... oh man, what was
the guy
his
that
name?
jacked off in the shoe?
Yeah, the guy that was kind of heavy set with the glasses and
yeah,
kind of a bigger guy. What was his name?
I don't know, but he was the one that had the shoe fetish, and it was just a really disturbing scene.
No, that was another guy. Remember?
They were all fairly disturbing.
Yeah, that was another guy. I know who you were talking about, the guy with the shoe fetish. No, this was like the first guy they ever interviewed. If you look up the picture of the real killer that was being depicted on that on Mindhunter by that actor, it's a dead ringer, man.
Really?
It looks so accurate. Yes. And just the dialogue that was back and forth was really good. I thought it was well acted. It's a great concept. It's fascinating.
You've got two types there, because it's, in actuality and in the TV series, one type of serial killer is not that bright.
Ed Kemper, that was his name.
Not that bright, right? Mm-hmm. It starts off as an impulse thing, or even an accidental impulse thing. It triggers something within them. They begin to repeat their crimes. But they're not that organized, right? Some of them get more organized as time goes by. They're hard to catch. And so they're the ones that are most often caught, right? And then you have these organized killers who are very intelligent, hyper intelligent, that can go their whole life without being caught. And some of them, at some point, get tired of the chase and they choose to get caught, right? And those, the Kemper, I guess, they're fairly intelligent and cunning and psychopathic, and they can sort of suck you into their world. Even the investigators can get manipulated by them, right?
Yeah.
And I thought that was interesting. There were some very disturbing characters, but then I got so into the fact that they were getting the science right, and the academic part right, and presenting it in the form of a story. The book was less of a story, more of an exposition. Although the author of the book actually got shot at one point. Like someone tried to assassinate him, and he got shot. And when he was older, like in his 40s or something, he got shot 4 or 5 times in a hotel room and survived it and wrote the book. So there's some real drama there. And for me, what was really interesting was they went back to the 70s. And then the 80s, and having lived through the latter part of the 70s and the 80s, listening to the music, looking at the styles,
yes,
it was very exciting for me. I'm like, whoa, remember that hairstyle? Look at that decoration in the background. And watching it evolve was pretty fascinating for me.
They ended each episode, it seemed like, for a while, they ended it with a song from that time period that was relevant to the theme of the episode. Yeah. I thought that was really clever. And then two, I just wanted to remark about some of these psychopaths is that they have never, most of them, been able to really relate with other people. And so they've been studying humans from the outside, almost like another species for a long, long, long time. And so these are people that can be very knowledgeable about people and be able to predict their behavior.
When I say
know
psychopath,
their buttons. But the thing is they know so much about people,
right?
But they don't know anything about how to be a person.
Right. Well, when I say psychopath, I mean, and I've been guilty of this, especially when I was younger. Before I researched this, to me, a psychopath seemed like a raving, foaming, angry person that was kicking shit all the time and going out, stabbing people at random and shooting. But that's not really what a psychopath is. It's basically someone who doesn't have any excuse me, empathy, the ability to relate to people. Pick this up while I kind of clear my throat here.
Yeah, well, these people, the fascinating thing is it goes back to, people ask, well, what creates a person like that? What causes that? There's probably loads of factors. Some of it could be genetic. Some of it could be the way they were treated by their parents. Some of it could be if they had some sort of disability like slight autism or Asperger's syndrome that prevented them from forming relationships at a young age, learning how to do that. It could be a certain addiction to violent pornography at some point that contributes to it. It's that there's a lot of different things that can help create that neuroses. It's not just one factor, is what I'm trying to say.
And also, all of these interrelate. So, for example, if you are born with a genetic predisposition to X, right? Let's say that you're born a little bit more excitable and easily irritated than other people, right? So you're like, well, yeah, but that doesn't make you a serial killer. Of course not, right? Now, if you have that genetic predisposition and your parents are like that, right? You both are going to be giving each other feedback loops, and it's going to create a high state of anxiety, right? Now, if that child and that parent happen to live in a very affluent neighborhood, they have access to all kinds of psychological care, health care, they live a low-stress lifestyle, right? It'll develop one way. Now, I take that same dynamic, put it in the ghetto, put it in a refugee camp, you get a whole different dynamic, right? And then you've got all kinds of factors, like, we're starting to realize how important diet is, especially the mother's diet when she's pregnant, to mental health and, all these things. It's not just one thing, it's many things, and those many things interact, and they interact with the environment. But I do think that the big thing I noticed about all the serial killers in the series, they were all male. They didn't cover female serial killers, did they?
No.
Okay. They were all male, and many of them just had really bad relationships with their mother. They had an absent or abusive father figure, and there had been some type of trauma in their childhood. Now, we don't know if that was exacerbated by genetic factors. We don't know that, but
I'll tell you what it is, man. This is the stereotypical family unit, okay, that forms, that creates abuse and trauma in a child, especially one that could grow up like one of these people. Is like you said, you have the mother who is non-responsive, non-committal, doesn't want to be intimate with the child, rejects the child on some level, and the child feels it.
And some people feel there's a connection to autism.
Yeah, and then paired with that, you have the abusive, angry, wrathful father figure who comes in and physically beats the child, or maybe molests the child even. And the child, not only is it not getting the love and affection from its mother that it needs, but it's getting abuse from the father, and it's angry at the mother for not coming in and protecting it from the father's wrath.
Now, I want to be fair.
So that breeds, in my mind, that lays the foundation for violence against women. And a lot of these men, these serial killers,
against women.
They killed their mothers first. That was the first victim.
I want to also be fair. The dynamic described, which does play a factor in many serial killers, right? Which I'm not denying that. The same dynamic exists for many people. There are many people that have gone through that and came out of it stronger.
Yeah.
Came out of it enriched, or they're like, I've overcome this, and now I'm going to educate myself, enrich myself, I'm going to improve myself, I'm going to rise above this. So it's certainly, you're not doomed if that happens to you. Right?
No, you're not doomed.
And the series doesn't really get into that because they focus on the ones, the ones that did have all this, did become serial killers, right? And so, we're not being fair, and I don't want people reading this to say, oh, well, I went through that and I'm not a serial killer. Is that what you're saying? Because it is certainly not what we're saying. We're relating it to the TV series, which only talks about the worst case scenarios.
I guess what's the saying? Every square is a rectangle, but every rectangle is not a square. Is that how the saying goes?
I've never heard that, but I'll take that.
It's basically saying that a lot of serial killers tend to share this kind of troubled family history.
Right.
But that in turn does not mean that every person with that same history is a serial killer. Does that make sense?
And I do know this, though. Many of those elements of absent or abusive fathers, especially absent fathers, bad relationship with mothers, social awkwardness. I feel like the way society is, you're getting more of that. And our society has been getting progressively more psychotic, in my opinion, in my experience. I mean, I couldn't possibly say all the factors, and I couldn't possibly say that I have a way out of it, but it is something to think about. It is something to think about.
It may be kind of a crass and cynical observation, but it's almost like the phenomenon with the mass shooters is like the millennial version of what was happening in the 70s.
Yeah, they want the
it's
attention.
like they want attention, they want something that's quick, easy, they're a little bit lazy about it. They just want to get it all done as quickly
I'm going to make a
possible.
confession here. I'm going to make a confession. I'm not proud of it. Every time there's a mass shooting, like the YouTube shooter, every time there's an incident like that, I
Yeah.
do what everybody else does, which is I go online and look that person up. And then I realize that what I'm doing is I'm part of the phenomena that's feeding this. If there are many people that are like, this is how I'm going to become significant and known, I'm going to die in a blaze of glory, everyone's going to remember my name, I'm going to go down in the history book. I think us doing that, it's contributing to the problem, but yet I can't help myself. Whereas these serial killers, they almost want anonymity. They thrive on anonymity.
Yeah, 'cause they don't want to get caught.
Right.
Whereas the mass shooter loves to get caught.
Yeah.
He thinks that getting caught is the greatest thing in the world because that immortalizes him or her and makes them a mythological figure.
Do you
almost.
think they're going to do a season 2 of Mindhunter?
Yeah, they definitely are going to.
Really?
Yeah. So.
It's disturbing, it's dark. Somehow I know I'm going to freaking watch it.
Well, I mean, it's just fascinating because, like we said in the beginning of this talk, and that's why I brought up mass shooters, because mass shooters isn't really part of what Mindhunter is, but what they're doing in Mindhunter, they're profiling these criminals.
Yeah.
Okay, they're trying to figure out the way their minds work. That's the same type of science and investigative psychology that we need today to tackle this other problem we've got, which is the problem with the isolated, vengeful, spiteful mass shooter.
We have anomie
need
in
to-
our society.
We need tools to be able to profile those people so that we can catch them before they go through with what they're planning. Whether that means better mental health screening or more mental health intervention for people that are really struggling.
Mm-hmm.
We need to figure out something because if we don't.
All I can say, I think the most productive thing I can say, aside from the fact that, I enjoyed the show, but it disturbed me. It's kind of like watching a car wreck,
Yeah.
If you do have a problem, seek help. Seek help. Even if you think you don't need help, if you simply talk to someone, and that may point you in the right direction. Especially like say you're everyone gets violent thoughts, I think, right?
Yeah.
But if you feel like you're being overwhelmed, you don't know what you might do, talk to someone, seek help. And that alone may put you on a path to surviving and coming out the other end of it. We're not saying that a true serial killer is never going to seek help. They're like, this is cool, this is what I want to do.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, this is my life purpose.
And I don't think it's curable. I don't think someone who thinks that way is in any way curable, given our current level of understanding. Maybe more detectable because of the science, maybe preventable,
Yeah.
but I don't think you can just take a serial killer and voila, you do this and they're no longer a serial killer. Unless it involves shooting them, then they're certainly no longer a serial killer.
Yeah, and my deal is I don't necessarily want to cure all of these people because I don't know if that's possible. If you've ever talked with somebody who has a history of serious mental illness and they've got all of these screwed up perspectives and beliefs and they're real depressive and cynical and hateful, and it's coming up against something like that is like coming up against a concrete barricade.
Right.
Okay?
And
No
it's
matter
not
what you
necessarily a
say,
crime to feel that
it's
way.
not a crime to be that way, but if you're trying to rehabilitate that person into functioning normally or being a positive person, healthy person, it's not something it's not gonna be easy. It's gonna be one of the most difficult things you've ever attempted to do. And they are gonna fight you every step of the way because that neuroses that's built up in their brain has had decades to form, okay?
Right.
So you're fighting against the momentum of decades of thinking a certain way.
I feel like this conversation I probably said like 20 or 30 completely untrue, incorrect things because I am so out of my depth in this. You know.
Yeah.
It started off. We wanted to discuss the show, but it's really impossible to discuss the show without discussing the phenomena.
Yeah.
And the phenomena is still in many ways a mystery. So.
It is. I don't really have a whole lot else to say, Belida. On your mind?
I feel like someone said, "Hey, here's some paint. Could you try to replicate Michelangelo?" You know, I feel like that's how far out of my depth I am. But we did say we would tackle different topics on this show, and we're not shying away from all types of controversy. So, folks, this is what I got. I hope that somebody got something out of it, and if you're really offended, we weren't going for that.
No, I don't think people are going to be offended. I think people are going to be relieved that we took the chance to talk about this subject, because this is one of the most important things facing our society today.
I got something.
Yeah.
I got something I want to close on. If you truly are interested in this topic and you want to see it represented in a fictional form, but in a fairly accurate, academically correct way, it is a good show. It is a good show to watch. But if you're easily offended, if you get disturbed, if you see some, if you're the kind of guy, you see some violence on screen, or you hear about a graphic, murder, and you just can't get it out of your head, you might want to stay away from this show, because the show is not shy about talking about this stuff. It's not shy about going in some very dark directions.
It's definitely a show for adults and for the morbidly curious.
Or the curious about something morbid.
Yeah. So, guys, thank you for being patient and sitting through that with us. We appreciate the support from all of our subscribers.
Right.
If
like
you
and
liked
subscribe.
the video, like, comment, subscribe below. My name is Scott.
My name is Belida.
And we'll see you guys in our next video.
Booyah.